Aliens dropped him on a death world. He built a civilization. Instead, Dr. Elias Varn opened his eyes to a sky he had never seen before. Two suns hung in the sky, one orange and one pale blue, casting long, shifting shadows across a landscape that seemed alive and dangerous. The wind howled, carrying strange scents that made his nose wrinkle. He sat up slowly, feeling the weight of exhaustion pressing against his body. One moment he had been aboard his research vessel, floating peacefully among the stars. The next he was here, on a world that seemed to mock the idea of human survival. The ground beneath him was hard, cracked, and strange colors rippled across its surface, as though the soil itself were breathing. Rocks of deep purple and shimmering silver jutted from the earth like the bones of some ancient creature. In the distance, jagged mountains pierced the sky, and lightning danced along their peaks in sharp, fleeting streaks. He shivered not from cold but from a deep, instinctive understanding. This world would not be easy. Elias tested the air with a small device clipped to his belt. Toxic pockets but breathable in small doses. He adjusted the filter mask built into his suit and pushed himself to stand. He had only a few supplies, a multi-tool, a ration pack, and the universal translator that blinked softly on his chest. Beyond that, he had nothing but human ingenuity and determination. The first challenge was immediate: shelter. The wind whipped fiercely, and the twin suns burned his skin even through his suit. He scanned the terrain and spotted a cluster of tall, tubular plants, their thick stems twisted and hollow. With care, he began hollowing out a small area, using rocks to reinforce the walls. By the time the second sun hung directly overhead, he had a crude shelter. It would not be comfortable, but it would protect him from the elements. As he worked, he began to notice the wildlife. Small creatures scuttled between the plants, their translucent shells shimmering with reflected sunlight. They did not seem aggressive, but they moved with an alertness that reminded him this was their world, not his. He made a mental note to observe them carefully, to understand their habits before acting. He knew humans often survived not by strength alone, but by studying and adapting. Food was the next concern. Elias tasted cautiously, sniffed cautiously, and observed the plants and small creatures from a distance. He experimented carefully, testing edibility with tiny amounts, letting hours pass to ensure nothing was toxic. Gradually, he learned which roots were safe, which leaves contained enough moisture, and which fruits could give him energy for days. Each discovery was a victory, a small triumph of human curiosity and caution. Days passed, though Elias did not keep strict count. He learned to navigate the terrain, to move with the wind, to find pockets of shade and water. He discovered a small stream, its water clear and surprisingly fresh, fed by underground springs. With a simple filtration system made from plant fibers and stones, he could drink without fear. Every step, every small innovation reinforced a growing truth: humans could survive here. Then one day, as he explored further than he ever had, he found something that made his heart race. Ruins. Not natural formations, but structures weathered and strange, as though they had once belonged to intelligent beings. Some buildings leaned precariously, others had collapsed entirely, yet the patterns of their construction were clear. He approached carefully, sensing both opportunity and danger. Inside the ruins, he found remnants of technology, small machines and panels covered in symbols that did not make sense at first glance. Elias had studied alien languages and technology for years, but even he was unprepared for this. Yet he was not discouraged. He touched a panel and a faint hum responded. Small lights flickered on, revealing storage compartments filled with tools, materials, and devices he could barely comprehend. For the first time since his arrival, Elias smiled. This was not just survival, this was possibility. He could use these resources to build, to improve, to learn. His mind raced with ideas. He could create energy, purify water more efficiently, even begin cultivating crops using the alien technology as a base. He felt the spark of hope that humans often carried even into the darkest places. He began experimenting. With patience, observation, and trial, he learned to coax energy from the alien generators, using them to power small devices. He crafted tools that were a combination of human and alien design. He built a small greenhouse using transparent panels salvaged from the ruins and filled it with soil and seeds he had collected. Slowly, green sprouts emerged, fragile yet determined, much like himself. Elias also learned to observe the creatures of the planet more closely. Some could be tamed, he discovered, or at least guided. Small, nimble animals helped him carry materials and warned him of approaching storms. The larger, more unpredictable creatures he learned to avoid, respecting their space rather than attempting to dominate it. He began to see the ecosystem not as an obstacle, but as a partner in survival, each species playing a role in the balance of life. Time became a series of experiments and observations. He tested methods of irrigation, built channels to direct water, and created rudimentary machines to aid in planting. He found ways to store energy for the nights when both suns set and the temperature dropped sharply. Every success reinforced his confidence. Every failure taught him patience. One evening, as the twin suns dipped below the horizon, Elias stood on a hill overlooking his growing settlement. The shelter, the greenhouse, the small paths he had carved through the wild landscape, it was a beginning. He felt a profound sense of achievement, not just because he had survived, but because he had begun to thrive. The planet that seemed intent on destroying him had become a canvas for human ingenuity. A thought occurred to him. This was just the start. If he could build this much alone, imagine what humans could achieve together. Imagine what civilization might look like if it were designed not just to endure, but to flourish, even in the harshest of worlds. He felt a surge of determination. The aliens who had left him here might have expected failure, but he would show them that humans were extraordinary not because they were strong, but because they could think, adapt, and create. Night fell, and the stars revealed themselves above the twin horizons. Elias lit a small fire, not for warmth, but to remind himself of human tradition, of continuity, of the spark of life that could never be extinguished. He knew the days ahead would bring more challenges, storms, scarcity, and unforeseen obstacles. But he also knew he had already achieved something remarkable. He had begun to bend a death world to his will, not with brute force, but with thought, care, and relentless perseverance. As he settled into his makeshift shelter, Elias looked at the faint glow of his powered devices, the small green sprouts reaching toward the artificial sunlight, and the creatures of the world moving safely in their territories. He felt a quiet pride. This was the first step of something much greater. A civilization could grow here, and he would be the seed. He closed his eyes, not in fear, but in quiet determination. Tomorrow, he would continue building, experimenting, and learning. The death world was harsh, but he was human, and humans thrived where others could not. For the first time since he arrived, Elias slept soundly, surrounded by the evidence of his ingenuity, his persistence, and the undeniable proof that even on a death world, life, human life, could flourish. The days turned into weeks, and the small settlement that Elias had begun to build on Zythera grew steadily. What was once a few scattered shelters and a tiny greenhouse had expanded into a network of carefully constructed homes, workshops, and gardens. The alien technology he had discovered in the ruins became the backbone of his progress. He had learned to adapt their energy grids, water systems, and materials to human needs, creating a place where life could not just survive, but thrive. Elias woke each morning before the suns rose, walking through the settlement to check on his work. The sprouts he had planted now stood tall, thick green leaves reaching toward the pale blue sun. He had figured out how to cultivate multiple types of food, combining alien plant species with those he had brought from Earth. The food supply was steady, and the variety allowed him to maintain his health and energy. Each success gave him hope and reinforced the belief that humans could flourish even in the harshest conditions. He had also begun to experiment with communication systems, using alien transmitters and his universal translator to send signals into space. Though he could not predict who would receive them, Elias hoped that other humans might hear his call. He thought often of the crew members he had left behind, of friends and family scattered across the galaxy. If even one human answered, they could join him and build something even greater together. Days passed in a rhythm of work and discovery. Elias taught himself the behavior of the native creatures, understanding their patterns and learning to guide them without causing harm. Some creatures were useful, helping to transport materials or clear land for planting. Others were simply companions, their presence comforting in the solitude of this strange world. Elias marveled at how the creatures adapted to him, just as he adapted to them. Together, they formed a fragile, peaceful ecosystem. Then one morning, while examining the horizon, he noticed a flicker of movement that was not his own. At first, he thought it might be one of the larger creatures he had learned to avoid. But as the figures approached, he realized they were human. A small group cautiously exploring, eyes wide with wonder and relief. They had seen his signal and followed it across the stars. Elias ran toward them, feeling a rush of emotion he had not experienced since he first arrived on Zythera. They greeted him with cautious smiles and tentative gestures, unsure if this lone human was friend or foe. Elias welcomed them warmly, explaining that this planet once thought impossible to survive on had become a home through patience, observation, and ingenuity. The newcomers marveled at what he had accomplished alone. Together, they began to expand the settlement further. Elias taught them what he had learned: how to cultivate food, purify water, use alien technology safely, and live in harmony with the creatures of Zythera. The humans worked in teams, combining their skills with Elias' experience. Some were engineers, some were botanists, some simply had a determination to live. Each brought something unique, and under Elias' guidance, they created a small but growing society. The alien ruins became central to their work. The team explored them thoroughly, salvaging materials and learning more about the technology left behind. They built classrooms to teach newcomers, workshops to craft tools, and laboratories to experiment with both Earth and alien plants. Every day brought new discoveries, and every discovery brought new ideas. Elias marveled at the speed of progress. The humans were not just surviving, they were thriving. They were creating art, stories, and music, filling the settlement with laughter and song. They had begun to decorate their homes, plant gardens, and carve small statues from stone. The settlement had become a community, and the community had begun to take pride in itself. The creatures of Zythera had grown accustomed to the humans as well. Some followed them on journeys across the landscape, alerting them to changes in weather or the presence of distant predators. Others became part of the gardens, helping pollinate plants or carry seeds. Elias had learned long ago that survival was not about dominating the world but working with it, and now he saw that lesson passed on to others. One evening, as the twin suns set, Elias stood on a ridge overlooking the settlement. Fires burned softly in the distance, small lights glowed in the workshops, and the greenhouse shone like a beacon in the fading light. He felt a sense of pride that was difficult to describe. This was no longer just a place to survive. It was a civilization in its earliest stages, and humans had built it with nothing but their minds, their hands, and their hearts. The next challenge came when the alien observers returned. At first, Elias had only sensed their presence, distant shapes in the sky, scanning the settlement with interest. He had known they were watching, as they had always been curious about the lone human they had dropped on the Death World. Now their ships approached more closely, silent and hovering above the settlement. The humans gathered, anxious and curious. Elias stepped forward not with fear but with quiet confidence. He knew what he had accomplished. The aliens were expecting failure, expecting to see a human struggling to survive, perhaps barely clinging to life. Instead, they found a flourishing settlement, humans working together, thriving, and demonstrating ingenuity and creativity beyond what the aliens had predicted. Elias approached the aliens, craft using the universal translator. The ships did not respond with words, but with a series of lights and vibrations that the translator interpreted as curiosity and recognition. Elias spoke slowly and clearly, explaining what they had done, how they had adapted, and how humans could build, learn, and innovate even in worlds that seemed impossible. The alien observers paused, seemingly impressed. Their presence was no longer a test, but an acknowledgement. They had underestimated humans, and now they saw the truth. Humans could not only survive, but they could flourish, they could create, and they could teach others to do the same. The settlement below them was proof, glowing softly against the darkening sky. With time, the humans and aliens began a new relationship. The aliens offered guidance, sharing knowledge and technology, but never controlling. They watched as humans adapted the gifts of technology in ways that were uniquely their own. The aliens were fascinated by the creativity, cooperation, and resilience of the human settlers. What they had once considered a simple test had turned into a remarkable lesson about the strength of a species they had underestimated. Elias felt a quiet joy in these days. He walked through the settlement, watching humans collaborate, teaching, experimenting, and celebrating small victories. Children played among the greenhouses, learning the lessons of the world through curiosity and observation. Adults worked together to build better homes, refine energy systems, and improve agriculture. Every step forward was a testament to human determination. One morning, he stood on a hill, looking at the vast landscape beyond the settlement. The mountains, once forbidding and dangerous, now seemed like part of a world that humans had made their own. The rivers flowed, guided by channels that humans had designed. Gardens bloomed with plants from Earth and Zythera, carefully tended and thriving. The creatures moved freely, part of a balanced ecosystem where humans and alien life coexisted peacefully. Elias realized that the settlement was no longer about a single human survival. It was about civilization. It was about teaching, guiding, and inspiring others. The humans had become creators in a world that had once seemed impossible, shaping it with intelligence, care, and creativity. They had learned to solve problems without violence, to adapt, to innovate, and to build a future that was hopeful, sustainable, and bright. The alien observers departed eventually, leaving humans to continue their work. Elias watched their ships disappear into the twin suns' glow. He did not feel fear or sadness. He knew that the settlement, the civilization they were building, and the lessons they had learned would endure. The aliens had seen what humans could do, and that knowledge would ripple across the stars. As the suns rose the next day, Elias walked through the settlement, smiling at the sights and sounds of human life thriving. The fields were alive with growth, the workshops buzzed with activity, and the children laughed, learning and playing. The humans of Zythera were no longer alone, no longer survivors. They were builders, thinkers, and creators. Elias stopped at the center of the settlement, placing a hand on a small stone marker he had set in the first days of his arrival. It marked the spot where everything had begun. From that point, humans had transformed a death world into a living, thriving community. The marker was small, but its meaning was enormous. It was a testament to the power of ingenuity, persistence, and human spirit. He looked around once more, feeling a quiet pride that warmed him more than the suns above. They had built a civilization from nothing, and it had grown stronger every day. Humans had thrived where no one thought they could. They had done what others had deemed impossible. They had survived, adapted, and created. And on this harsh, beautiful planet, Elias understood the truth that had guided him from the start. Humans did not need easy worlds to prove themselves. They only needed courage, intelligence, and the will to keep building, learning, and creating. With those gifts, no death world could defeat them. Elias smiled and turned back to the settlement. A new day had begun, full of possibilities, challenges, and discoveries. And he knew that humans would continue to rise, stronger, wiser, and more extraordinary than anyone had ever imagined. Years had passed since Elias Varn first set foot on Zythera. What had begun as a lone struggle to survive had transformed into a bustling, thriving human civilization. The settlement sprawled across the plains and hills, a network of homes, greenhouses, workshops, and schools. The children of the settlement played freely among the fields and gardens, their laughter echoing across the landscape. Human ingenuity had turned a death world into a home, and now it was time to take the next step. Elias walked through the central plaza, watching the settlers work together. Some were tending to crops, carefully rotating plants to maintain soil health. Others worked in workshops, constructing new tools and machines inspired by both human creativity and alien technology. The air was filled with the soft hum of generators and the chirping of native creatures that now moved comfortably among the humans. The world had become a partnership, a living system where humans and nature thrived side by side. Despite all their progress, Elias knew that growth demanded vision. The settlement could not remain confined to a small area forever. There were vast lands beyond the central plains, mountains to explore, and rivers that could power energy systems if harnessed carefully. With careful planning, humans could expand and create a society that was not just surviving, but inspiring. He called a meeting in the largest communal hall, a structure built from a mix of alien materials and human designs. The settlers gathered, eager to hear what he had to say. Elias spoke clearly, without fear or hesitation. "We have built something extraordinary here," he began. "We have transformed a harsh, unforgiving world into a home, but we are not finished. There is more to learn, more to explore, and more to build. Together, we can create a civilization that shows the universe what humans are capable of. The settlers listened, their eyes shining with excitement and determination. They understood that the journey ahead would be challenging. They would need to work together, respect the world they had learned to live in, and continue to innovate. But they also felt the thrill of possibility. Humans had arrived on Zythera alone, but now they were many, united by a vision larger than themselves. Elias began organizing exploration teams. Small groups would venture into the mountains, mapping terrain, studying local flora and fauna, and identifying resources that could be used safely. Other groups focused on agriculture, improving crop yields and experimenting with new techniques. Some worked on energy systems, developing ways to store and distribute power efficiently. Every effort was collaborative, every task contributing to the larger goal of building a civilization capable of thriving indefinitely. One morning, an exploration team returned from the mountains with exciting news. They had discovered caves rich with rare minerals and crystals that could store energy. The materials were unlike anything on Earth, yet they could be adapted for human use. Elias felt a surge of excitement. With these resources, they could expand their energy systems, create new tools, and enhance their technology without harming the planet. The settlers worked tirelessly, blending human ingenuity with alien technology to harness the new materials. They developed solar collectors that absorbed the light of both suns, batteries that stored vast amounts of energy, and machines that could build structures more efficiently. The settlement grew in sophistication and beauty, a shining example of what humans could achieve through cooperation, creativity, and perseverance. Despite their success, Elias reminded everyone that the world of Zythera was still a challenge. Storms could come without warning, and unfamiliar plants and animals still required careful study. Humans had to remain alert, cautious, and thoughtful in their approach. Elias often led teams into the wilderness, teaching settlers to observe, learn, and adapt rather than dominate. This mindset became a cornerstone of their civilization, understanding and working with the world, not against it. As the settlement expanded, communication systems improved. The signals Elias had sent years ago now reached distant human colonies across the galaxy. Messages arrived, asking for guidance, sharing ideas, and even seeking to join the Zythera community. The settlement became a hub of human innovation, a beacon to others who wished to thrive in harsh environments. Humans from other worlds began to arrive, bringing new skills, knowledge, and ideas. Each arrival was met with curiosity, welcome, and collaboration. The children of the settlement became the focus of Elias' vision for the future. Schools were established, combining lessons in science, agriculture, ethics, and history. They learned about Earth and about Zythera, about survival and about creation. But most importantly, they learned the value of imagination, cooperation, and persistence. Elias believed that a civilization could only grow if its young minds were encouraged to explore, invent, and care for the world around them. Elias also began documenting their progress. He recorded the techniques they had developed, the lessons learned, and the stories of settlers who had overcome challenges with creativity and teamwork. These records were not just practical, they were a legacy, a guide for future generations. They demonstrated that humans could achieve greatness not through force, but through thought, innovation, and collaboration. One day, as Elias walked through a flowering orchard, he noticed a group of settlers constructing a monument. It was simple yet elegant, made from the local stone and decorated with carvings of the sun, the mountains, and the people who had first arrived. Children helped shape the stones, elders offered advice, and everyone worked together. The monument was not just for them. It was for the future, a reminder that humans could create beauty and meaning even in worlds that seemed impossible. Elias paused to watch them. He felt a profound sense of pride, not in himself, but in what humans could accomplish together. The settlement had grown into more than a home. It had become a society built on ingenuity, empathy, and respect for life. The settlers had learned to solve problems peacefully, to share knowledge, and to value every contribution. In every corner of the settlement, there was evidence of human creativity and resilience. The alien observers returned once more, curious about the civilization that had grown beyond their expectations. They hovered above the settlement, silent and watchful. Elias led a group to greet them, speaking through the universal translator. He explained the growth, the expansion, and the philosophy of their civilization. The aliens listened, their lights and vibrations communicating surprise and admiration. Humans had exceeded their expectations, not through force or aggression, but through intelligence, cooperation, and vision. In the following months, the humans and aliens collaborated more closely. The aliens offered advanced knowledge, teaching new ways to harness energy, improve sustainability, and understand the ecology of Scythera. But humans adapted the knowledge in their own way, blending it with their creativity and ethical values. Together, they created systems that were efficient, sustainable, and uniquely human in approach. The aliens were fascinated by the ways humans solved problems, their willingness to experiment, and their insistence on ethical responsibility. As time passed, the settlement expanded into a true city. Buildings rose with careful design, incorporating gardens, energy systems, and spaces for learning and gathering. Streets wound naturally around the landscape, following the contours of hills and rivers. Humans had learned to live with the world, not against it, creating a civilization that was harmonious, resilient, and beautiful. Elias often walked among the people, observing their work and their play. He saw engineers teaching children to build machines, gardeners showing young settlers how to care for plants, and artists painting murals that celebrated both human ingenuity and the beauty of Scythera. The settlement was alive, not just with technology, but with culture, creativity, and community. One evening, as the twin suns dipped below the horizon, Elias climbed a hill overlooking the city. Lights glimmered across the buildings, gardens, and streets. The hum of generators and the soft voices of people filled the air. He felt a quiet sense of wonder. Humans had done something extraordinary. They had taken a death world and transformed it into a place of life, learning, and hope. They had proven that intelligence, creativity, and empathy could overcome even the harshest challenges. He thought of the first days when he had struggled alone, unsure if he could survive. And now, here was a civilization thriving because of human effort, vision, and spirit. He smiled, feeling the weight of history and the promise of the future. Scythera was no longer just a planet. It was a testament to what humans could accomplish when they worked together, with care, thought, and perseverance. Elias realized that the journey was far from over. There would always be challenges, new worlds to explore, and new knowledge to discover. But he also knew that humans were ready. They had learned to survive, to innovate, and to create. They had built a civilization on a world that was once considered impossible to inhabit. And they had done it not through violence or domination, but through intelligence, cooperation, and compassion. As the stars appeared in the sky above, Elias felt a quiet sense of hope. Humans had arrived on Scythera as strangers, alone and vulnerable. Now they were a civilization, a shining example of what could be achieved when people worked together with vision and determination. And he knew that this was only the beginning. The city continued to grow, the gardens continued to flourish, and the children continued to play and learn. Humans had transformed a death world into a home, and in doing so, they had proven something far greater, that life, intelligence, and creativity could overcome any challenge. Elias looked at the horizon, feeling the pulse of the civilization he had helped create, and knew with certainty that humans would continue to rise, to explore, and to build wonders wherever they went. The twin suns set, the stars shone brightly, and Scythera thrived. Humanity had found its place among the stars, and nothing would ever stop it from growing, learning, and creating. Elias smiled, knowing that the world, once deemed impossible, had become a home. And it was human hands, human minds, and human hearts that had made it so. Years had passed, and the human civilization on Scythera had grown beyond anything Elias could have imagined. What had started as a single person surviving on a hostile world had become a thriving city, filled with life, learning, and creativity. The settlement spread across fertile valleys, gently sloping hills, and the edges of the alien forests. Every day, humans explored new technologies, developed new systems, and continued to work in harmony with the native creatures of the planet. Elias walked along a paved pathway winding through the heart of the city. Children ran and played in the green spaces between buildings, their laughter blending with the soft hum of energy grids and the gentle sounds of native animals. The humans of Scythera had learned to live peacefully, to solve problems together, and to use their intelligence to make life better for everyone. Every structure, every field, every workshop spoke of human creativity and perseverance. Despite the remarkable progress, Elias knew that they could not remain isolated forever. The universe was vast, filled with other worlds and other civilizations. Humanity's growth on Scythera was proof of what could be achieved, but it also meant that humans could take their knowledge and creativity to even greater heights. He began to dream of connecting Scythera with other human colonies, sharing lessons, and inspiring growth elsewhere. Elias gathered the leaders of the settlement in the central hall, a large building filled with sunlight from transparent panels. They came from all corners of the city, each having contributed to its growth in their own way. Engineers, scientists, teachers, artists, and explorers all listened as Elias spoke. "We have built something incredible here," he said. "But we are not finished. There are other worlds, other humans, and other possibilities. We can show that humans can thrive anywhere, and we can learn from the universe just as it can learn from us." The settlers nodded, inspired by his words. They had seen what humans could achieve together, and they were ready to take the next step. Exploration teams were organized, tasked with studying the surrounding regions, mapping the planet, and preparing pathways for trade, knowledge exchange, and future growth. Humans learned to communicate more effectively with the native creatures, understanding their signals, their habits, and how they could safely coexist across a larger area. During one expedition into the mountains, Elias and a team of young engineers discovered a network of caves containing glowing crystals. These crystals stored energy naturally, more efficiently than any technology humans had yet developed. Elias recognized their potential immediately. With careful study and ethical experimentation, the humans developed ways to safely harness the energy without disturbing the ecosystem. This new source powered the growing city and allowed for more advanced research and expansion. Back in the city, schools and workshops flourished. Children learned advanced science, ethics, and engineering alongside lessons about Scythera's plants, animals, and weather. Adults continued their work on energy systems, architecture, and agriculture. Artists painted murals inspired by the world around them, while musicians composed songs celebrating the harmony between humans and the planet. Every citizen contributed, not because they were forced to, but because they understood the importance of working together to build something lasting. Elias often visited the outskirts of the city, where humans were experimenting with new ways to cultivate land and interact with the environment. They had begun designing vertical gardens to maximize space, creating water purification systems that mimicked natural streams, and constructing observation towers to study weather and wildlife. The settlers were becoming not just survivors, but teachers and innovators. They were proving that intelligence, creativity, and empathy could shape a world. One day, a new group of humans arrived, drawn by the signals Elias had sent years ago. They were from distant colonies and had traveled for months across space, inspired by stories of a thriving human civilization on a planet thought impossible to inhabit. The newcomers brought knowledge, ideas, and skills that expanded the settlement further. Elias welcomed them warmly, showing them the systems humans had developed and inviting them to contribute to the growing society. The city thrived not just because of human effort, but because of human collaboration and shared purpose. As the settlement expanded, the alien observers returned. They hovered silently, observing the city below. Elias approached them with a calm confidence. He spoke through the universal translator, explaining the growth, the culture, and the philosophy of human civilization on Scythera. The aliens communicated their approval through lights and vibrations. They had underestimated humans, but now they understood that humans were extraordinary not because of strength or aggression, but because of creativity, intelligence, and cooperation. In the following months, humans and aliens collaborated in new ways. The aliens offered insights into energy efficiency, environmental balance, and advanced communication systems. Humans adapted these lessons, combining them with their own innovations and ethical values. Together, they developed technologies that improved daily life while maintaining harmony with Scythera's ecosystem. The aliens were fascinated by the humans' ingenuity and their ability to work together without relying on violence or domination. Elias watched as the city continued to grow, filled with light, sound, and life. Streets curved naturally around hills and rivers, gardens flourished, and buildings reflected both human creativity and alien influence. The city was not just functional, it was beautiful, a symbol of what could be achieved when humans worked together and respected the world around them. He often reflected on the journey from the first days when he had struggled alone. The trials of survival had taught him patience, observation, and problem-solving. They had shown him the power of intelligence and cooperation. And now, he saw those lessons being passed to a new generation. Children played in gardens, learning about plants and animals. Young engineers experimented with machines, improving systems and creating new possibilities. Artists and musicians expressed themselves freely, adding culture and joy to the community. One evening, as the twin suns set, Elias climbed a hill overlooking the city. The lights of homes and workshops glowed warmly, greenhouses shone like beacons, and the soft hum of energy grids filled the air. He felt a quiet pride not in himself alone but in humanity. Humans had transformed a death world into a thriving civilization, demonstrating that intelligence, creativity, and collaboration could overcome even the harshest challenges. He thought about the future. Humans would continue to explore Scythera, expand into other regions, and share their knowledge with other civilizations. They would face challenges, yes, but they were ready. They had learned to adapt, innovate, and work together. They had learned that life could be nurtured, not just endured, and that a world that seemed impossible could be transformed into a home. The settlement's energy grids hummed softly, powered by both alien and human ingenuity. Gardens swayed gently in the evening breeze, filled with fruits, vegetables, and flowers that thrived in Scythera's unique conditions. Children laughed and played near the streams that humans had guided carefully, and adults worked together to refine systems, teach skills, and build homes. The city was alive, a testament to the strength of human collaboration. As the stars appeared in the sky, Elias stood silently watching. He understood that humans had arrived on Scythera as strangers, alone and vulnerable. Yet, through determination, intelligence, and creativity, they had built a civilization. They had done it without violence, relying instead on problem-solving, cooperation, and respect for life. A group of young settlers approached him, asking questions about the history of the settlement and how it had begun. Elias smiled, sharing stories of his first days on the planet, of learning to survive, and of discovering the alien ruins. He explained the importance of observation, patience, and ingenuity, teaching them that every challenge could be met with thought and care. The children listened intently, absorbing lessons that would guide them as the future builders of this civilization. As the night deepened, Elias returned to his home, looking once more at the city he had helped create. Lights glimmered in every direction, showing humans working, learning, and living in harmony with Scythera. The city was more than a home. It was a symbol of hope, ingenuity, and resilience. It proved that humans could transform impossible worlds into thriving communities, that intelligence and collaboration could overcome challenges that seemed insurmountable. Elias knew that this was only the beginning. The city would continue to grow, the gardens would continue to flourish, and humans would continue to learn, explore, and innovate. New generations would rise, bringing fresh ideas, creativity, and hope. Scythera had become a testament to human achievement, a shining example of what could be accomplished when people worked together, respected the world, and used their minds to solve problems. The twin suns set once more, and the stars illuminated the city. Humans had turned a death world into a home, and in doing so they had demonstrated something far greater, that life, intelligence, and creativity could thrive anywhere. Elias smiled, knowing that humanity's story was far from over. The world of Scythera had become a place of learning, innovation, and hope, and humans would continue to shape it with courage, wisdom, and compassion. In the quiet night, as the wind moved gently across the plains and the creatures of Scythera settled for rest, Elias felt the pulse of life around him. This civilization, built from nothing but determination and imagination, would endure. Humans had shown that no world was too harsh, no challenge too great. They had survived, they had adapted, and they had created a future that would inspire generations to come. And as the first rays of the suns rose again, illuminating the city with golden light, Ilias knew that humans would continue to rise, explore, and flourish wherever they went. Zythera had become their home, but their story was now part of the universe itself, a story of hope, ingenuity, and the unstoppable spirit of humanity.